Okay, first day Rosh Chodesh Sivan Hayoim Yoim. We'll start with that before we jump into the Tanya. Interesting Hayoim Yoim. I'm not that they're not all interesting. Okay, first of all, he tells us our custom in reviewing the weekly parsha. We do it twice the text, and once the Targum, the Aramaic translation. So in doing that, we review verse by verse. We also review the Haftorah, and sometimes there are two in the case of Shabbos Rosh Chodesh or combined parshas, etc. Okay, that's Hoga of Lubavitch. Get rid of this call. Okay. The Alter Rebbe's response to a young genius, an Ilui, a genius, who was famed for his intellectual gifts. And this young genius, with this response from the Alter Rebbe, was at this person's first Yechidus in 1795 in Liozna. And the content is that spiritual and physical are antithetical in their very essence. Meaning what? A superior quality in the physical is a deficiency in the spiritual. And he explains. For instance, in material matters, one who is mesamech bechelke, right? You should be happy with your life, is an individual of the highest quality. In other words, whatever God gives you, you are mesamech. You are happy. A person possessing this trait will, through avoida, attain the highest levels. Now, in spiritual matters, on the other hand, to be satisfied with your lot is the worst deficiency and leads, God forbid, to dissent and folly. Starts with apathy. I'm happy with my lot. Look where I am holding in my avoida. And that can lead you to fall, because the expression we say is, Mylin b'kodesh. When it comes to holy things, you have to be always looking up and going up. So there has to be at least a trifle of dissatisfaction with where you are, no matter how exalted you may be, high on the ladder of avoida, because the ladder has infinite rungs, and it's always higher and higher. Interesting. Okay. We are now here. I'm going to start our lessons in time. On page 954, you're starting with a Hagah, a note of the Alter Rebbe, having spoken about how grasping Hashem himself and even grasping his midos, his attributes, are totally beyond our ability, because as much as he's made us in our image, we're only an image of him, and we are not really like him. He is, in the language of Rabbi Rashab, particularly in 9 days. Well, first of all, we'll take the language of the Rambam. The Rambam says about Hashem, he's the Kadmon. He's the primordial, which has no preceding primordial. Primordial implies that it always was, is, and will be. It has no cause. Everything else comes from the primordial and has a cause. And so there establishes the root difference between Hashem and his midos, because the Rabbi Rashab says also his midos are primordial. Our midos derive from the first infusion of godliness into us, which is in the sphere of Chachma, and then Bina and then Das, and then they seep downward and bring forth these midos, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, etc., etc. He and his midos are one. His essence is indivisible. And here we'll start with the Hagah. So how does he create multiplicity? Well, we've talked about this quite a bit. He creates the Tzimtzum. So the Alter Rebbe here starts with bringing some explanation of Sod HaTzimtzum, the secret of the Tzimtzum. Okay, the secret of the Tzimtzum, the Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu, in the light of the infinite, blessed be He. The Tzimtzum Adam Kadmon, and the contraction which gives rise to what's called the primordial man, Adam Kadmon. In the geography of creation, the first emergence of anything that has even a sense of being something else is called Adam Kadmon. It's the first point of what's also called in the language of Hasidus and really Kabbalah, the Kav. To be just very simple but straightforward, because this is just quoting simple language, Hashem is and always will have everything in a very nascent primordial state. Nothing caused anything by him. He is the cause of everything. And he moved that primordial state, that allness, al-hatzad, that's the language. He moved that to the side. This is a metaphor, of course. There are no sides, right? There's only him. But he moved that to the side, and he injected into that place where he had emptied out a very small beam. That beam of this is all metaphorical, of course, and that beam is Adam Kadmon. That's the primordial state of the supernal man, which the supernal man contains all 10 spheros, and all the 10 spheros, of course, are the machinery by which all of creation is brought into visible or revealed existence. So that's called Adam Kadmon. The Soid Hadikma. And it's also associated with the secret of the beard. The beard has strands. Strands are divided. They come from a singular source, right? But they divide into strands. So Hashem is a singular source containing everything that was, is, and will be. But initially, that's not revealed. It stays under the skin, so to speak. And then it comes out into singular strands, which are, you can imagine, a singular source of light, which now, if you put it through, let's say, a prism, if that's a metaphor that's used a lot, what happens is you see that latent in that singularity is a whole rainbow of colors. So that's the image of the beard. That latent in the oneness of Hashem is the extrusion of and the appearance of multiple beams. And that's called the Dikna, which is Soid Kol HaTzimtzumim. And this is the secret of all the Tzimtzumim, all the contractions. The Tzamtzum or to contract the light. She is slabish, vibechinas kelim the yud sviros, and that light now becomes invested in what's called the 10 spheros. The 10 shine spherolos and shining, according to the Alter Rebbe, 10 illuminations, 10 distinct illuminations. Now, now we're down in the world of what we're more familiar with, right? 10 spheros. And after there's an investment of the light of the infinite in the categories of which we call kalim, vessels, starting with Chabad, Chokmah Bina Das. So Oz Shayach Leimer, then it's possible and relevant and fitting to speak about Mashikosav HaRambam, which the Rambam writes, where he says, at this level, after Hashem reveals from his essence, that's an expression that spheros are a gilu min ha'etzem. This is important. They're not something that's created. They're a revelation of what he essentially is, gilu min ha'etzem. However, once they become revealed in a state of multiplicity. But they're always a gilu min ha'etzem. Why do I say this is important? Because that means that in every subatomic particle of creation, there is invested the essence of God himself. That never, as ever, is removed. It just manifests itself as discrete substantiality. And once it's manifest, that's the level that the Rambam is talking about when he says that Hu ha-Yudea, that he is the knower, the Hu ha-Mada, and he's the knowledge, the Hu Yadua, and he's the thing known. So when Rambam says that he is this, He's not talking about Hashem in his essence. He's not talking about Hashem before the Tzimtzum. He's talking about Hashem after the Tzimtzum, when there was revealed Chochmah, Bina, Das, different strands. I'm pulling because we're of the muscle of the hair of the beard, the dikna. And then he says, the Rambam goes on, he is the knower, the knowledge, and the known, and it's with a knowledge of himself that he knows every created being, because there is nothing besides him. Because the vessels in the world of Atzilus, now we're back to Hasidic talk, not Rambam, because the vessels of Atzilus, Nasim Neshama B'chayis Libiyah, the vessels of Atzilus, right, the containers, so to speak, in which he puts the light, they become the soul and the life force of the lower worlds. They become the vessels of the lower worlds into everything which is contained in them. Now, if it were not for this Tzimtzum, the halbasha and Hashem dressing himself up, so to speak, in these garments, as we mentioned above, then we don't talk. It's that it wouldn't be that he is not the knower. All there is atzmus, essence. And he's not the knower and the knowledge and the thing known. He's not Gedder. He's not within the category or the limitations of das umada, of knowledge of knowing and thing and what's known at all. That's for sure. He's much, much higher, and always we say much, much higher means much, much deeper than that. He comes from this primordial state, and these things are not primordial. They're brought into existence from the primordial state. So he's much deeper than anything which comes out of him. Rav, much, much deeper than that, very much. Ad ein kates, without any limit, meaning in a totally different category. He himself, the etzem, is in a totally different category than anything else, because everything else has, even the words I'm using, has some thingness. Everything has some thingness to him. He has no thingness to him. He is like the dot of the Shem Havaya, a point of no dimension in which everything is contained. That's his primordial state. He's removed and not relevant at all in this primordial state to even the highest sphere, which is the sphere of Chachma. To such an extent is he not relevant to the sphere that he emits, that we bring now something we've said before, which we were saying yesterday, that even Chochmah, which is the top of the heap, the top of the whole Seder Histalshalis, is like nothing. Chochmah is considered by him Yisborah the Bechinas Asiyah, Yashmis. It's nothing more. It's considered just like the physical world, because it's so far removed, qualified. Nothing's removed from him. But in terms of its expression, it's so far distant, also not distant, but so far different than his essence. That's the Haggadah. Now, we have more, but I'm going to pause here. This is today's Tanya goes to the end of this paragraph. Let me just pause here just to see if anybody has any questions before we move on. We ascribe attributes to him only after the Tzimtzum. Before the Tzimtzum, there's nothing you can say about it, because anything you say will be something discrete that you've said, and there's nothing discrete. It's all. Okay, but now we go to the top of the page. If you're looking in Likutei Moharan, V'hinei ein lanu eisep in historias. Even though he's just given us this whole note, he says we don't deal in hidden things. We're not. This is not our avodah. Our avodah is not to deal in hidden things. Only to deal with things which are revealed to us. and to believe with a complete belief. Now we hark back, this whole section is called Shar HaYichud, the gateway or the gate to unity and emunah. So now we're speaking at the moment, we'll soon speak about unity, emunah. What we're establishing here is that our faculty of emunah, which is an essential and pervasive trait amongst every Jew, because we're called ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim. We're called believers, the children of believers. We're not called intellectuals, the children of intellectuals. No matter that Chokhmah is wonderful, but it's nothing compared to emunah. Because emunah is where we see, in ways that our heart can understand, those things which our mind cannot explain. So we are, those things which are revealed to us. What is revealed to us? Lahamin emunah shlema, to believe, have faith, with a complete faith, the ihu v'ramneuchad, that though there's him, we speak about him and the things which come from him, they are all one. Ihu v'ramneuchad, he and those things which come from him, which are the kelim, are the vessels, are all one. So this is the yichud. Yichud, now you see a bit why yichud and emunah go together. Because the ability to think about, or to not think about, but to have any sense of Hashem's unity is a function of emunah, rather than a function of intellect. He and his causations are one. The Hainu, what are we talking about? His causations, the things that he brings out, these are his midos, right? He creates everything with midos. The midah of chesed, that's day one, let there be light. The midah of gevura, day two, let there be a rakia, something solid, something that's, you know, like my dad clenched, that's the gevura. These are his midos. The ihu, and so, but he and those midos are one. The hainu midosav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the midos of the Holy One, blessed be He, v'ratzoynei v'chachmosei u'benosei v'daitoi, and his will and his wisdom, all aspects that we speak about himself, his will, his wisdom, his understanding, v'daitoi, and his knowledge, they are all in origin, in the primordial state, with his essence, which is exalted and alone. Remenes ein kates, an exaltedness which has no end. Way above, way deeper than any chachma, than any intellect, or than any understanding. Therefore, therefore, and this is critical, therefore, his unity, where he is united with his midos, so his midos, which are now coming out of him, right? He is always united with them, meaning the very essence of himself, the allness of himself is always present in the multiplicity of what he exudes through the Tzimtzum. His oneness is there in the midos, which emanate from him, may he be blessed. Gamken. This Gamken, and this is also something that one cannot understand. How essence is present in the smallest, I keep saying subatomic particle. That's as far as I go. There are probably subatomic particles as well. But his essence is contained, and this is like a big trick, right? His allness is contained in his multiplicity. And in that which we do understand about him, when we relate to his holy midos, we're relating, even though we're relating to particular things, and in our avoida, acting out certain things like chesed, right? Through tzedakah, his essence is there. So it's impossible, he says, this is not graspable to understand how the infinite is invested in the finite. From our logical perspective, that's a contradiction or a paradox. If it's infinite, how can it be finite? Well, he is, as the Kabbalists have told us, he is Naiseh HaFochim. He is the one and the only one who carries with him in his essence paradox and darkness doesn't darken from him. Paradox is not paradoxical to him. And therefore, since he is contained in his multiplicity, in his essence, in his midos, they're called midos of the Holy One, blessed be He. And what are those things, this multiple stuff through which He creates the root engines of multiplicity? These are the 10 spheros, which they're described in the Holy Zohar as Rosa de Mehamanuta, the 10 spheros, and in the multiplicity is the allness and the essence of God. The Zohar calls Rosa de Mehamanuta, the secret of faith, which is faith, which is higher, deeper than intellect. And that's today's Tanya. Okay. Comments, questions?
I love how it ends, because ultimately it's all about Amunah. Ultimately, it's all about Amunah. I mean, not just because we're limited in our ability to comprehend, but I think that's the deeper connection that we can make with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the whole Seder, Histalshelus. I mean, it's all, in a way, we just operate on Amunah. Torah, I mean, yes, we were there at Har Sinai, but I don't remember. Do you remember? I don't remember. Somewhere in me, I remember. But it's as much as and yes, we're Chabad and we study and we learn and we push our intellect as far as we can push it, but there's always a limit, and that's all. And after that, there's always a spot that we have to take that leap for Amunah, and that's what he's saying, basically.
When somebody tells you that Chabad's all about intellect, right? Chabad. No, really. All right, yes, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so open up our hearts and move into Rosh Chodesh. We'll meet again in your session.
Sort of, only good. Prep